Everybody, once again, welcome to 10 Questions with the Beerists. You guys are the worst at jingles.
That was great. I thought it sounded really good.
Question 1. Matt Fiffner says, other than Grant's Epic Malt Liquor episode, what episodes are you most fond of and why? Grant.
I really enjoy the blind taste tests because I think that is an equal opportunity kind of breakdown of really trying to figure out beer. It challenges us in ways that, I think that we have a lot of preconceived notions about beer when we just are able to see it as well.
Michael?
So any of those.
I'm going to echo Grant on this one. My favorite episodes that we've ever done was February, right before the pandemic hit, when we were doing the blind episodes. That it blew my mind in every stretch. It was so great.
I really wish we could do that again this year, but it's really hard to pour beers for yourself blindfolded. So we're probably going to just push that. And whenever the pandemic's over, that's going to be pretty close to first on the plate for what we're going to do.
So in March. Cool.
I personally like the episodes when we don't all agree on beer. I think those are so fucking cool because it gives us an opportunity to talk through and to actually like figure out what we're thinking about a beer rather than just, yeah, this is good. We have to kind of once in a while defend why we like a thing to the other people. But I also like so much when we learn something new. That's why that low alcohol, the no alcohol beer that we just did, that episode 461, that was fucking great for me because it was at every corner. Every time we tasted a different beer, it was like mind-blowing, or it was just something new that we learned, or
right. I always think of the cans versus bottle episode, which was so early on.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those cool ones of like, oh, I had this preconceived notion and challenging myself.
Yeah, well, if you're being honest with yourself and you understand that you've had this idea of what something is or could be for the longest time, and here comes every little bit of evidence that shows you that you're wrong. That's so cool.
New paradigms. It's pretty great.
Next one.
Question.
Any style/trend predictions for 2021? Thanks, no.
I would say this is again going to be kind of following what we've seen already with lower ABV. My guess is the reason why is during COVID, people have just been day drinking a lot, and they want something that can really get them through the day. They don't need some big ABV beer. They need something light that, like saisons back in the day. Saisons were brewed for people out in the field so they could sip something while they're working. We need a working man's beer, and we need to destigmatize drinking on the job.
Wait, that's a little too far.
Okay.
But I also think we're seeing a bit of an exodus away from alcohol from a bunch of people.
I think that low and no alcohol beers, and then I think that there's going to be another one with gluten-free or gluten-reduced beers.
Yeah.
Next one?
Yes.
Taylor Bronson says, your take on low cal trend. What we were just discussing.
I think it's good. The thing that we were discussing beforehand is like, what do you think your predictions for a trend is? And it is that, but I also will go further when talking to Taylor that I think it's a good thing because it's something that further expands the boundaries of what beer can do. And that's always a good thing. It's going to bring more people in.
We had that low calorie beer from Yingling.
Right.
That Yingling Light, and that was one of the best light beers I've ever had in my entire life. You can still make low calorie beers and have them taste amazing. And as long as they taste good, that's all that really fucking matters to me anyway.
It does make me wonder, though, if there's going to be a little bit of a pendulum swing. If once we are back out there being able to socialize and drink, breweries are going to find a little bit more luck in raising that ABV again because people just want to go out and get fucked up with friends? I don't know.
Yingling Light, and then barley wines and pastry stouts.
There
That's
you
Fuck. Next question. Saxophone Chihuahua again. He asked the question last time. How about doing a gluten-free / reduced show?
Man, all these questions are just like right on topic with what we're discussing. Like one after the other. No.
Yeah, I'm totally down. I just need to find 4 on the shelves at the same time.
Here's the thing is that I'm really surprised that this isn't a more prevalent thing. Every single beer that the brewery that I work at produces, we use biofine as a clarifying agent, and we use brewer's Clarex, which goes in and eats up all the gluten. Every single one of the beers that we have is less than 20 parts per million. So they're all gluten removed, essentially. And we're not the only brewery that does this in town. I know that Austin Beer Works does that at least with a couple of their beers. I know Flavor Country and Pearl Snap are all gluten removed.
And don't take Mike's word for that. Check with the brewery if you want to drink it and you have celiac disease.
Of course.
Right. But that is really cool how much more accessible it is for people. And I'm all for, being able to, like, especially since it really doesn't seem to dramatically affect the flavor of certain beers.
Not so much the flavor, but it can dramatically affect the appearance. Our hazy IPA is hazy no more.
Oh, take out the hazy.
Well, yeah, one of the main things that you need in order to keep that appearance, there's a bit of gluten in there.
All the breadcrumbs floating around in the.
So as soon as the clarifying agents and then that brewer's Clarex goes in there, you give it enough time, it becomes completely crystal clear.
Well, let's move on to the next question. Thank you, Chihuahua. Nick Cortez, what's y'all's opinions on the latest drama in the beer industry? That being Boulevard Brewing's president having sexual accusations leading to his resignation. Anytime any company treats any of their employees with that kind of disrespect, it boggles my mind. I don't understand why that even happens. I wish that they were swifter penalties, more harsh penalties for those pieces of shit.
I mean, we celebrate an industry that makes awesome beer, right? It's a great product, but there's also a problem with the overall demographics of the beer industry. It's predominantly a bunch of bearded white men that look like Mike. I'm kidding, Mike, but not really. But it is, mostly men and mostly white, and we saw the problem earlier with what was the other brewery that was bad with their relations with minority employees.
Founders,
right? And like, shit coming out there too, and there isn't enough accountability going on, and there are problems with how most breweries are kind of like reaching out to these other communities. There should be more communication. There should be more voices in the community. And, I recognize we're 3 dudes on this podcast, but, up until the point that all the ladies continue to leave us because we're awful. It's been great being able to have, female voices on here too, to talk about this stuff, especially from perspectives that we're not always going to get.
Yeah.
And
that's the reason why whenever the COVID thing is over and we do get another person in that 4th chair, I want it to be another woman.
Right. I mean, we just had someone today ask me on Instagram about like, oh, hey, I love you guys' podcast. I miss the girls. And I was like, that's one of the things. As soon as this is over and we can bring another person on, we would love that.
I think accountability is something that isn't talked about enough in this industry. And I think that one of the other things is that we're dealing with an industry that peddles alcohol.
Yeah.
And that can drastically affect people's decision makings and the actions that they take.
Exacerbate bad behavior. Yeah.
It exacerbates bad behavior. And I've seen a lot of inexcusable stuff on a ton of different people's parts.
Well, dude,
So
you
it's
work at
it's
a
tough.
bar where you see customers all the time who just get shitty toward people too. Like
Oh yeah,
it's pervasive, but also in systems of power, when someone's in charge of other people, inevitably there are going to be people who take advantage of that and abuse people below them, often women and minorities, and it's shitty. And yeah, we need more accountability.
Next question. Mac, I was gonna call him Matt Fiffner. Getting lots of beers I never dreamed of before COVID. Does that continue? Or do breweries go back to more limited distribution when we have more people going to their breweries? That's a good question. There are more breweries distributing out of their areas now that they're having trouble selling out or selling their beer from their tap rooms. Is that going to continue? I hope so.
What's your beat on this, Mike?
It depends. It's one of those things where the brewery that I work at, the furthest that we used to distribute is, to the end of the parking lot. And
Right.
I don't know that we're gonna plan to move into the store or anything like that anytime soon, but beer to go was not a core part of our uh, marketing strategy. And now it is, like, doing beer to go and things like that. But the other part of it is that you don't make nearly as much money on the stuff that you are packaging to go as you would on the beer that you're actually selling on premise. When you're selling beer to go, you're trying to get it to move out the door. And when
Right.
you're having it inside the brewery, I mean, you're charging, $6 or $7 for a pint to have on site, but you might be just charging maybe $3 or $4 on the beer that you have to go, or at least for the equivalent size or ounce,
And
per
I
ounce.
imagine that's even less so when it's distributed to a retailer.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where when people start coming back into the actual brewery, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the volume that they were moving to retail stays in the brewery.
Yeah, my guess is that it's gonna have to retract back into their home brewery when local sales recover and they're having trouble meeting distribution demand, or, having trouble saying, "Hey, that's a valid option," to distribute when they're
You know,
making a lot more money just selling it from the tap.
we got a good question on the last question mini that we did from Carissa, asking about like positive outcomes from COVID.
Mhm.
And I think maybe there's a little bit of a silver lining to look at how COVID has allowed breweries this kind of flexibility to figure out another way to be able to can and distribute. That might have been there might have been barriers to them being able to do that beforehand, like
If their
a
local
lot of like
governments
collaboration and talking about like and breweries like helping each other to do this. And
if their local governments allow them to do that.
Right.
understandably true, but but at the same time, it is cool that we're able to get more access, and hopefully when people go back out to support their breweries, they're also taking home beer again.
Yeah. Next question. Eric Anton, I'm running out of things to do in quarantine. What are you listening to, playing, watching, or reading these days? Let's make this one quick. I just finished season 4 of Fargo, which, if you haven't seen that show, it's on Hulu. Watch it. It's fucking amazing. Watch the whole thing.
Mm.
The Mandalorian's been great. Pixar's Soul was really good. And I hated Wonder Woman too.
Mike?
I've been watching a lot of political commentary
Oh, for
while
fuck's
I
sake.
work out. And
Oh no,
I use
that's what
that
Mike
to
is becoming.
I use that to motivate me to work out harder. So
You're getting
start
swole, man.
start working out and find anything you can to motivate you to getting better.
Yeah. So what's Alex Ross saying? Alex Jones, I mean. Alex Ross.
Alex Ross is a comic book artist.
Yeah, he's a
What's Alex
wonderful
Jones
artist.
saying?
Alex Ross. What Alex Ross is saying is Marvels. Marvels was just one of the best miniseries and comic books ever.
Hey, Grant, do you have an answer to this
I
question?
do. I do a couple podcasts, one on Star Trek, and I do really actually enjoy the new Star Trek Discovery as well as Lower Decks. I'd recommend you check out both of those. Lower Decks was really hilarious animated Star Trek. And then Star Trek Discovery is just ends up being a lot of fun. But right now I'm doing a new project, MCU Pod, where I talk about Marvel's new WandaVision and then other Marvel properties as they come out on TV and movies. But I really am doing those podcasts because I'm obsessed with those shows and I can talk about them with a lot of enthusiasm. I'd recommend those. Otherwise, get a Nintendo Switch and get Breath of the Wild because that game is so amazing and you can really pour a lot of time into it.
I can't wait till I end this podcast forever so I can play that game.
It's so good. Nathan Tilley says, if you were talking to someone who has never tried a craft beer before and you could only recommend one beer, what would you recommend? Depends on the person and what their preferences are, right?
Hi, if you had a song to recommend to somebody, what song would it be? Like,
It's From a Rose by Seal.
Kiss from a Rose by Seal.
I'm with Grant.
99 Luftballons.
I know the song, but the beer, that's a much tougher one.
It depends on the person. It depends on what they like and what they don't like. The answer is different for, my dad than it is for some random person on the street.
I run into this every day at the brewery, and it's always tailored to things that they actually enjoy. Like, what's a drink that you actually enjoy? What's what flavor profiles do you like? Do you like acidic stuff? Like, most of the time when they're like, hey, I've never had a craft beer before, or like, I just drink Budweiser, it's like, oh, here's our Pilsner, or here's our Vienna Lager, or something to that effect. There's all sorts of things where you can pull somebody in with just accessible styles.
That said, strawberry rhubarb from Nuclearis.
There you go.
Next question. Ron asks, will you ever do a homebrew episode?
No. Have you ever tasted that stuff? It's garbage.
Oh, no.
If Chad does the whole thing, maybe.
No.
Okay. Yes.
No, there are other fucking homebrew shows. Like, we're not that. I want our listeners to have a fighting chance of tasting the beer that we're trying and also having a good experience because it was a good recommendation,
Yeah.
I don't want to go through
that.
No, homebrew's a cavalcade of messes that you're hunting frivolously for a pearl through.
Yeah. Oh, I like how the acetaldehyde plays with the diacetyl.
If homebrewers want critiques of their beer, they should ask other brewers, and they'll learn more that way. Join a homebrew group in your area.
There's lots of them.
Yeah, everywhere.
Guaranteed there's a local one in your city.
Let's hit our last question here.
Okay.
Andy Richter says, would you consider doing a tasting on your next live stream? Pick a beer that's readily available so we can all drink along.
Yes, I'd love to do that.
That'd be fucking cool.
Why don't you guys, listeners, patrons right now, why don't you send me any mix packs that are nationally available? Just let me know if there's a good one right now. Like, if Firestone Walker's making a mix 6 or something.
Sierra Nevada.
Yeah. Let me know who's making a good mix pack and, we'll figure it out.
I think that'd be a great idea.
Yeah.
Man, this episode ran a little long. Do you guys want to chunk it?
Yeah, let's chunk it.
Chunk it.
All right.